You are listening to the Next Play podcast, the playbook for high-performing leaders who want to exceed their full potential. From walking on the Ole Miss football team at 5'7", 150 pounds and earning a full D1 scholarship, to coaching thousands around the world and working with massive organizations like IBM. I've learned countless lessons that I'll be sharing right here with you. Join me as I interview some of the most successful people so you too can learn how to focus on always moving forward by deciding, planning, and executing on the next play relentlessly. All right, this is Richie Contartesi, also known as Relentless Richie with the Next Play podcast. And today we have an amazing guest who has done some really, really cool things in the corporate space and personally, and through some of his live and virtual events as well. So super powerful, all around communication, has a great story. But his name is Richard Newman. And let me just share a little bit about him before we jump in. He has been inspiring audiences for the past 20 years all over the world, helping people to find their voice. Really, really big. Find their voice, connect, and come to life. He's passionate about teaching simple techniques that can transform your success and happiness. His podcast has listeners in 90 countries, and his articles have been read by over 10 million people. This guy knows what he's talking about. He's got a lot of experience. He'll share positive mindset and storytelling strategies that allow you to overcome your current challenges so that you can reignite the spark in your life and create lasting change. Something really, really cool that he shared with me before connecting here is that he helped one client achieve 100% win rate during their sales presentations, which brought in over 1.5 billion in new contracts in 1 year. That's a big deal. So without further ado, my guest here, Richard Newman. What's up, man? Glad to have you.
Yeah, really good to be here. Thanks, Richie.
Yeah, absolutely. You've obviously done some really cool things, and you look young too, like for everything that you've accomplished. You know, when I first pulled up your one sheet in your picture, I was like, dang, this guy looks really, really young. But he has all of these accolades. So cool, man. So where did this all start? How did you've got a book, how did you get to this spot where you're like, I can help people find their voice and speak?
Yeah, great question. Well, I mean, the story really spans back over the last 40 years. So I'm 44 now. Thank you for the compliment that I look young. I think I was just healthy living and a lovely wife, or some combination. Yeah. Doing what I love too. But for me, I realized very early on when I was 4 years old, I changed schools, and I'd gone from a place of being where I was really happy. I had friends, I was connecting, and changed schools just before my 5th birthday, and totally struggled to connect and just didn't know why, and felt like I was living in this glass bubble, and felt like that for much of my childhood, just that real struggle with figuring out communication. I could see other people were doing it and they were getting better at it, and I just wasn't. And it got to a place where late on, as I was about to leave school, I realized through various different events, I was going to have to get a grip on this. And so instead of going off to university, I had places lined up, I had offers there, and I decided I'm not going to do that. I have to do something different. And I'd lived a relatively nice, comfortable life by that point. So I thought I want to go and give back and learn about communication. So I went off to go and live in a Tibetan monastery, which was in the foothills of the Himalayas, and just near Darjeeling, if people are familiar with Darjeeling tea. And I lived there for 6 months with these Tibetan monks, cut off from the rest of the world, by which I mean, there was no internet back then. We had a phone that worked for maybe 5 minutes per week. We barely had electricity. And what was more is that the monks didn't speak any English. When I got there, they spoke Tibetan, Nepali, and Hindi. And so I had to figure out, well, how do I connect with other human beings who don't have a common language with me? Yeah. And so I spent 6 months with them, figuring out that actually the only way I was going to do that was being completely and utterly congruent with my communication. Meaning that if I wanted to teach them the word excited, if I didn't look excited and sound excited, then it just wasn't going to work. I could be saying pineapple and they'd have no idea. And so I had to have this total congruency. And then by the end of the 6 months, it was an amazing process. I loved living and working with them. And by the end of that time, they then knew how to speak English relatively well, and I could speak Nepali back to them. And I came back just fascinated by this whole piece of nonverbal communication, which I realized is much beyond what people think it is. So some people think nonverbal communication means scratching your nose, folding your arms, lie detection. But actually, nonverbal communication is how humans connect with each other. It's how we've done it. Before there was common languages, this is how tribes would connect. And so I kept on studying it from then. I went to professional acting school in London for 3 years, and then kept on studying this, got every book I could possibly imagine. Like, this is the neat bookshelf I have in my house behind me. I've got like 400 books just upstairs. And continued to study it. And then I went to, it was about 2016, I put together a research project on nonverbal communication, where we involved people from around the world to figure out, is there a way of proving definitively what you can do with communication, non-verbally changing your behavior to increase your connection, your confidence, your influence, your leadership ability. And we continue to train that to all of our clients, to the point where, I mean, I'm sort of amazed by this, but we've now trained 100,000 people all over the world in how to put this into action.
Wow, that's amazing, man. And when I first spoke with you and you told me how many clients you have in a year, I was blown away. Like, I couldn't believe, like, without any crazy funnels and marketing, like, you just have ton. I mean, that says a lot, right? So here's a really, the first question that comes to mind, the book behind you that you wrote that is awesome. Yeah. You were born to speak. When someone sees that, they think, what I'm doing right now, like getting up on stage, speaking, talking, and what you just shared was more about tonality and body language and how you speak, not necessarily the words that you speak. Talk me through a little bit of that. I mean, is it more about body language and tonality and expressions, or is it also actually speaking, like the words?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, when this comes to mind, the piece around the body language, I think a lot of people are familiar with this study that was done by Albert Morabian back in the 1960s, out of which came those statistics of 7% of communication being words, 38% being tone of voice, and 55% body language. But what a lot of people don't know is that in 2010, he was interviewed on the BBC, and he said, look, this got blown way out of proportion. This was a study done decades ago that was only involving about 60 people, and it was never supposed to be this big thing. And so clients ask me about this all the time. And I always say, look, your words are really important. I love words. I'm a speechwriter, a storyteller, and an author. I love those. You've also got to make sure that the body language is working. And so I often say to people, what would you rather have? Would you rather have just a random person on the street reading to you from the works of Shakespeare? Or would you rather have your favorite celebrity, politician, or leader reading to you from a cereal box? And overwhelmingly around the world, I ask this question. They go, no, I want that celebrity or leader that I admire reading from the cereal box, because I'll be just mesmerized by their delivery. And so I always say, look, you've got to have both of these. But the key behind the title of my book, You Were Born to Speak, is that so many people I've trained over the years have said, well, communication, you can either do it or you can't. Some people are born communicators and some people aren't. And my message is always, no. Human beings are born with a phenomenal ability to connect with each other. It's what makes us great as a species on this planet. We're not the fastest species. We can't outrun other species. There's so many that are faster. We're not stronger, but we are stronger together as a species. We can communicate and connect at a number of people together in a tribe that no other species can do so. And so we can work together to create buildings, to create economies, to create countries in a way that other species can't on that level. And so I'm always keen to say to people, look, even if you think you're a terrible communicator, take it from me. Look, when I was a child, I was referred to by my parents continually as the shy boy. I've always been an introvert, meaning that I get my energy by being alone rather than being with other people. And yet I get paid well and love my life for speaking on stages around the world, teaching other people communication, because we all have this innate instinct. If we get our armor out the way, get out the bad habits and come back to who we are born to be, we all have an instinct to want to be with others and to be able to connect with them.
So that's such a good point. So why is it that so many people, like, they can communicate, they can learn to communicate, but they don't? Why is it that people are fearful of it? Like, why don't they actually do it?
Yeah, I think that there really is a reluctance from a lot of people where, I think through life, we start to learn, what is it that I'm good at? If I put all of my energy into this, do I get praise or do I get pain? And early on, if you get people, and I often have this with clients, people are really reluctant on communication. It can be all the way back to when they were 7 years old and raised their hand, and everyone in the classroom teased them for doing that, and they got pain. Whereas when they just put their head down in their books and studied hard, they got praise. And so you often find that later in life, people think, well, that thing's pain. If I communicate, it's pain. And so they hold their voice back and they put armor on, and they decide not to connect with others, but instead dive their head into spreadsheets or wherever they're going to put their time. And there are other people who, when they were 7, 8, 10, 12 years old, put themselves forward to be in a school play or raised their hand, and the crowd cheered. And they thought, oh, this is good. I get praise for this. I'm going to keep going in this direction. So they keep on practicing down those two paths. But it doesn't mean that if you haven't really put much energy into it for a while, that you can't become great at it. There's some people I've worked with in their 40s, 50s, 60s who said, wow, I wish I had this training 30 years ago. But what we're really aiming to do is to help them find and connect with their voice. And for some people, it's just a matter of, coming to the body language, some people freeing them up to the idea that they can gesture, that it's not a bad thing, where they might have been told by their boss when they were 25, oh, stop gesturing, you're waving your arms around too much. And they literally took it to heart and stopped. And so we're getting people back to, how do people connect? How do people engage? Let's do some more of that. And as soon as people start to do it, it just frees them up from habits and allows them to really connect with the people around them.
So you're saying it's like riding a bike. Like if you can learn to ride a bike, you can learn to communicate well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And even easier than that, because, human beings, we to learn to ride a bike is kind of this strange thing, a bit like, learning how to drive a car. You sort of figure out, okay, how do I do this and not crash and fall over? But humans are great at connecting with each other. And so it's almost like just unlearning doing something else.
Okay.
Unlearning the habits that are really holding you back in different ways. And, I'll give you an example of clients I've been working with this week, where I'll give them presentation coaching. And, they go up to the front of the room in front of their peers, and you'll hear them, really holding their voice back and holding their gestures to their side and not really making any eye contact. And I'll say to them, what impression do you want to make? And they'll say, I want people to be passionate about what I'm talking about. I want them to be motivated to take action. And I'll say, okay, let's imagine you have no slides. Imagine that you're the presentation. You are why people are here. You can email the slides. You can email the sales deck that you've got for somebody. Let's get you to connect and just get them to free up their voice, free up their arms. And people are understandably fearful of doing that because they've had pain from doing that in the past. But once you do it and they realize, wow, people are liking this more. They like this version of me more. It's a more open, real version of me. Then suddenly, there's no holding them back at that point. I'll just share with you a quick story about Will Smith. I watched Will Smith last night. He's doing his book tour at the moment. This amazing new book he's got called Will. And he was saying, there's nothing more powerful than helping someone connect with and find and speak their truth and use their true voice. And that's what's kept me loving what I do for the last 21 years, helping people find that voice and speak it.
Okay, awesome. So my audience right now is hungry, man. How do they do that? How do they find their voice and connect?
Yeah, a great question. So the first place that we always start with people is we start with the body, because what you do with your body transforms what you're doing with your voice. And so there's many things that we've looked at and studied on this piece. So the first piece we always get people to do, if they're doing virtual meetings, hybrid meetings that we have these days, in person, is working on your posture. So if you look at a child, when they first stand up, if they put their feet together, they fall over. If they put their feet too wide or sprayed around, they fall over. And eventually they realize, okay, if I stand with my feet shoulder width apart, I can stand up. I can stay here. And then they have to work out how to pivot and move their legs around. But they realize that's the posture that actually allows us to be upstanding rather than on all fours. And so we get people to connect with the floor, whether you're sitting down, standing up. Get your, what we call putting your weight in your feet, which is if you're sitting down, this is a sense of being in a position where you could stand up without having to use your hands. So you've got that sense of the weight is in your feet, whether you're standing or sitting. We also get people to get that position of being centered. If you are centered in your body, standing or sitting, gravity's working with you, you feel stronger, and by physics, you are stronger. If someone pushes you and you've got your feet together, you go over, you are a pushover. That's the position you're in. Whereas if you've got your feet centered, feet shoulder width apart, sitting down or standing up, you're physically stronger, which gives you that appearance of gravitas. And once you start to get that piece into gear, the next piece that we like to free up is the hands, allowing people to gesture. And people think, well, what is gesturing? Is it like charades? If I talk about rain, do I need to show rain with my fingers? And it's not about that. It's just that what you'll notice is with effective communicators, and we have the instinct to do it as well, is when we've got an important word to say, we gesture on that word. And if someone's listening to me, they know which word I just gestured on. I gestured on the word gesture. That's the one that suddenly became emphatic. You can hear it stronger. It's powering my voice because I gestured on that word. And great speakers figure out which is the most important word in the sentence, and that's where my gesture is going to go. And so once you get that piece going, okay, thinking posture.
Real quick, can you give me an example of that, of like a sentence? Is like, so is that like saying, like if I were to say the sentence, let's go to the park. It's let's go to the park. Let's go to the park. Let's go to the park. Let's go to the park, or let's go to the park.
Yeah.
Like the same sentence, but said so many different ways, right? Is that what you mean by like, I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah. So I mean, we translate meaning in that way. So I'll give you an example on this. I mean, if someone listening to this thinks about it, have you ever had a text message where you just completely misread it because you just didn't know?
Oh, for sure.
It was important. We do that every day. Like if it's important and there's emotion involved, pick up the phone, because otherwise you lose it. So to try this sentence, the sentence is, I never said he stole the money. So I was talking about this with a guy at a conference yesterday. I never said he stole the money. Now imagine this. If you say, I never said he stole the money, well, who said that he stole the money then? He still obviously stole it. Or I never said he stole the money. I implied it, but I wrote it down. I didn't say it.
Right.
I never said he stole the money. Okay, he borrowed it. Well, that's fine. Stop calling the police. I never said he stole the money. Well, what else did he steal at this point?
Yeah.
So the meaning completely changes based on that. And the way that you do that, if you write it down, what you might do is put that word in bold, or you might underline it, or you might
emojis.
You could maybe.
Is that a gesture? Right.
Yeah, maybe to add the emotion. But when you're speaking to people, or if you're doing audio, I mean, if you look at great voice actors who are doing these voiceovers for animated characters and Disney stuff, Pixar, they're constantly gesturing to put the emotion across. And so gesturing in a sentence is a way of splashing highlighter pen on what you think is the key word. And so we've got to free those up to power the voice. And once you've done that, if you expand your posture, if you expand your gestures, then the voice starts to come out. And for many people, we find their voice is stuck in their throat. So they tend to sort of talk from here a little bit, and it's kind of restricted. And often this might be stuck behind the lips. Where if people in open plan offices, you get this still when people are online. If they're in an office with a bunch of people around them, what they tend to do is really restrict their voice because they don't want to make too much sound because they might disturb people. And they'll say, I'm really excited or I'm really disappointed, and you can't hear it. So what you need to do is if you're virtual with people, you've got to enunciate as if the other person is lip reading from you. So by doing that, they're going to get the clear expression. But what you're also doing is allowing the voice to come from the diaphragm all the way out. So you're allowing your real voice out, coming down here. There's other pieces that we work on with people, which is deep, full breaths. So if you're feeling nervous about something, rather than taking a deep breath, which is what most people do, where you breathe in and then you get tension going into the top of your chest, which isn't going to help you at all. We talk about to really power your voice and to make yourself feel more confident is to push all the air out of your body. Just get it out, relax, and then let the air come back in. And suddenly you're going to be able to use your diaphragm to power that voice through as well. And as soon as you're doing that, what happens, I mean, why bother doing this? What people then see is someone who is more present, has more gravitas, feels more centered, and is more at home in their own voice. And as soon as they do that, the ratings for the person in terms of how confident, convincing they are they a good leader? Would you vote for them in an election? These all start to soar. And you're basically just getting rid of physical habits you've built that are holding you back.
Got it. So just to like summarize a little bit, because this is a lot of good information. So like, even, just standing with your feet under your hips, right? Like standing or sitting with your feet under your hips in a power position, not holding back from your throat when you're speaking, but actually speaking, using expression. It's okay to use your hands. If you're excited and you want someone to feel excitement or passion, then you've got to be excited and show passion. These are all things that are really, did I miss one or two there? I'm trying to.
Just to build on what you said there, we often say to clients, nobody will ever be more passionate about your product, your service, or your idea than you sound. So we often get people holding back. They go into a meeting and they're trying to play it cool. And they say, well, I think this is a good idea. And I really think that you should support this. And I'm excited about it. And we say, well, tell your face then. Tell your voice. I mean, you don't want to be overblown and saying, this is amazing. Of course not. But if you really believe in it, speak like you believe in it. And this is where, leaders that we really buy into, what we're gaining from those people is a sense of warmth. They care about us, plus a sense of strength. They believe in their own voice. They're not just trying to get validation from others and saying anything to try and get a sale. What they do is they speak their truth and speak it with conviction in a way where they care about you, but they're not trying to please you. And suddenly when we see that, we get that strength and warmth coming from them, and we feel that we want to be led by them. We feel like we can trust them because they're doing what we feel is them speaking their truth. And therefore, that's where you can build trust, credibility. You can build a relationship from that point because you feel that you're connecting with a real person.
Got it. And so just to kind of like wrap that portion up, how does somebody come to life, right? Like, have the confidence to do these things, find their voice and connect and look people in the eye and all. Like, how does somebody get the confidence to do that? To even take action?
Yeah, good question. So there's a mindset cycle that I teach people, which I call raising the bar, because it's BAR, beliefs, actions, results. Your beliefs change your actions, which change your results, but it goes around in a cycle. So your results change your beliefs. And what I worked out many years ago is I could short circuit the system. If I change their actions, that changes their results and that changes their beliefs. And so there's nothing more powerful than when we work with leaders where we'll go and coach them in front of a small group of their peers, because I could coach them one-on-one and get them to a place where they're amazing. But the look on their face is, I haven't got any results yet, so I haven't changed my beliefs. But if I get them to change a few actions in front of their colleagues, like if we work with a sales team, and then you can see that the other people on the virtual training or the other people on the in-person training are saying, that's it, John, that's better. You seem better. You sound better. I believe you more. Then their actions have changed their results, which changes their beliefs. And so often it's faster. I mean, changing your mindset is very powerful, and we do work with that, and I know that you're great at that side as well. The piece that I've always focused in on is if I change their body language and their voice and they get better results, the beliefs about what they're doing and how they should communicate will change, and it will keep on going in a self-fulfilling cycle.
So bar is a snowball. You change the actions that change the results. You change the beliefs, you change the actions, you change the results. I love it. And
it's snowball in both directions. If you have negative beliefs, they become negative actions, negative results.
Oh yeah.
If you have positive beliefs, positive actions, positive results. You just need to trick the system. If you're in a downward spiral, change one part of it and it starts to upward spiral.
I hope everybody listening took something away from that. Like that is a huge takeaway, and you explained it really easy. That's a tough thing to explain. So putting it in that bar concept was definitely really cool. So I just want to dive into the storytelling. I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. And, if you're listening to this and you're in a leadership role, or you're in some sort of performance type role, being able to tell your story, or to tell the story of your idea, of something you're pushing to your staff, or to higher ups, or to your spouse, or, the stories that we tell really make a big impact on getting our ideas across or getting a sale. How do you go about teaching storytelling? Like, what are your storytelling strategies that allow people to overcome challenges? What does that look like?
Great question. This is an area I absolutely love teaching because I love stories. I love books. I love movies. And we tend to find the way in with people is often when I'm doing, say, a sales training piece, I'll start off the session by saying, okay, everybody tell me, what are your favorite movies? Let's start there. And then people start to share stories that they absolutely love. And, if you can teach storytelling from that place and say, this is what do all these movies have in common? This is the structure they are following that forces you, compels you to watch it over and over again. And you feel like you have to stay with it from start to finish. So that's often the way in, is to show them this is the structure that great stories have. But then when I bring it back into a business context, I say, let's now analyze what is it that most people do. And when I break it down, I give people a long training on this, but the simple thing to say is that I'll start to teach it and say, what do stories start with? What do effective meetings and sales pitches start with? It's a challenge of some sort. There needs to be some kind of problem. People come to you because they need a product or a service that's going to help them with some kind of challenge. They've got a need. And that need could be to do with something financial or time or some kind of value that's at stake for them. They have a challenge. And I say to people in sales all the time, I was speaking at a conference yesterday where I said, okay, you tell me, there's 400 people there. I said, shout to me, what do you need to do next in the story? You say to your customer, okay, I understand you have a challenge. Here is my what? And 400 people shouted out, solution. It's the solution. You've got a problem. Here's my solution. And that's not storytelling. That's just telling. That's what really everybody gets wrong about storytelling is they're either trying to do two things. They either go with the 12 steps of the hero's journey, which is brilliant for telling an epic movie, but it doesn't help you write an effective email. Or they just go from, here's your challenge, here's my solution. And they think that they're telling you a story. But think about it this way. Anyone in a long-term relationship will know this, that if your loved one comes home from work and says, I've had a terrible day, loads of challenges, and you say to them, well, here's my solution. How quickly do you end up divorced at that point? Nobody likes that, right? They don't want to be told the solution.
They want to be heard, for sure.
They want to be heard. That's it. Yeah. They want to feel like they can trust and connect with you and open up with you about those things. And so I often say to people, look, it's critical. You don't sell people your solutions. You talk to them about a better future. That's what you need to do. So position the conversation around, okay, there's a challenge. Now let's talk about a better future. And by doing so, you become a trusted advisor. You're not trying to force them to a product or a service. You're becoming the trusted advisor, and it leads to bigger contracts and longer lasting relationships with people because they have that element of trust in the guide that is taking them on that journey.
Got it. Do you still start with the problem? You start with, now I get it. So you start with the problem, and then instead of talking about, hey, I have the solution, because isn't like story brand, there's a story brand framework where you actually try to make the client the guide or whatever. But in this scenario, you're saying you share the problem, and then instead of sharing, here's my solution for you, it's you actually share with them that, hey, there is a better future. There's a better side to this. There's another side. Like that's so what comes after that?
Yeah, great question. So, if anyone wants to see like a storytelling masterclass on this, you can go and check out some of the late, great Steve Jobs pitches on this. He does this exactly. So like you said, you start with the problem. The only piece you might add in, which you see in stories all the time, is you might need to add in credibility before that, because otherwise, if you talk to someone and say, hey, tell me about your problems, they might think, well, who are you? I don't even know who you are. So you might need to add in a bit of credibility. This is who I am. Just like we did on this podcast. You said, hey, Richard, tell me about your backstory. Who are you? So people get to know me, and then they'll trust and come on this journey. We see this in movies all the time. We meet a guy or a girl or an animal, and they are living their life, and then a problem comes in. So we're always doing that backstory. Then when you talk to people about, you go through the challenge, you talk about a better future, what you need to do is the guide on that is to then talk to them about the journey. What is that journey now from the challenge to the better future? And how can you talk them through that?
But is that the solution? Is that your solution? Is the journey?
Essentially, it's the solution box. Yeah. It's often called the long act 2 in storytelling. Act 1 is very much, there's a challenge, but an insight of a potential better future. Act 2 is the journey from the challenge to the better future, which may involve your product, your service, case studies, data evidence that people need to gain in order to believe that journey is possible and believe that they should go on that journey with you. So you're really breaking down what that would look like in a way that talks them very comfortably from where they are to where they want to be, so they can see how it helps them in that journey. And then the piece that comes at the end of it, which so many people miss, is often that, they get to the end of that and they say, well, that's how the product works. Any questions? And the person's thinking, yeah, I got a question. What am I supposed to do? That feels like, that's going to take years. I don't really understand. And so the piece that you need to do is you need to get people to do one simple thing. So I often break it down like this and say, if you love someone and they love you, and you get down on one knee and say to them, look, I love you so much. Will you give birth to 3 children, get a mortgage and a pension? They'd be like, what? This is too much. You're asking me too much. But if you say to them, will you put the most beautiful ring you've ever seen on your finger? Then they'll go, okay, yeah, that's fine. We can talk about the babies and the mortgage later on. So it's just that sense of, you've talked about, there's the challenge, there's the better future. Here's a journey we could go on together. First step, exactly right.
So it's not like, all right, let's set up the kids, the prenup, the house. Whoa. So it's like not going in for the huge. So it's a kind of another way of saying call to action, but what you're specifying is that it's a very specific and the first call to action, not sign the agreement. Maybe what is it? If you're in a business, let's just use sales for an example, and you get to step 4. What do you suggest as the first call to action?
So the first call to action should be the tiniest step.
Not what's your questions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not. Do you have any questions, discussions? Because people will say, "Oh, okay, maybe we'll have a meeting. Let's take this offline. Let's park this. We'll come."
I have a bazillion questions. I just don't know what they are yet. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. So instead of that, a call to action, I often say, is where you might say to somebody, "Okay, what we need from you now is to agree to." Committing $15 million to this project for the next 6 years. It'll involve 25 people. That's a call to action. And the person says, that's just way too much. Whereas what you actually need, let's say that they said yes to that, what do you actually need first? What is the very tiniest thing you need? What you need is a meeting with Margaret on Tuesday. That's what you actually need. Margaret in finance has to sign something on Tuesday. Just talk to them about that one thing. That's the piece where so many people go wrong. And it's also, if you think about this as the hero's journey in terms of storytelling, it's the place where most people don't take that move, or they don't buy, or they don't go further through a funnel because it just feels too big. They are bravely stepping forward into the possibility of a different future. All you need to do is help that person have courage to take the first step and make it feel so easy and so supported that, of course, they're going to go with you.
Mm-hmm. I just have to say, this is really good. I'm a little confused. So I just want to just make sure, because I know I can't be the only one. So you just said for the call to action that, so, you know, it's going to be 15 million over XYZ period of time, that like, but then, which is big. And then you said, but really the first step is to schedule a meeting with Mary. Excuse me. So would your call to action in that situation be like, so if you'd like to move forward with the process, the next step would be to schedule a call with Mary, or a meeting with Mary on Tuesday? Or would you say the first part? So in order to move forward, it's 15 million. It's how, like, which one is it? I was just a little confused there.
Yeah, good question. So let me reel back just to give people a summary of this.
Yeah.
You meet someone for the first time. There's a little bit of trust build, credibility. What's your backstory? What's my backstory? We get to know each other. Then you find out from someone, okay, talk to me about your challenges. What are your concerns right now? Don't go to a solution. You just talk about those. Then you say, okay, what would be a better future for you? Depending on your sales cycle, your sales process, you might say, are you looking for something like 6 months, a year, 5 years from now? Where do you want to be? What does that look like? Then when you talk to them about the journey from A to B, the journey from pain to pleasure, you then talk them through saying, okay, so like if we were to work together on this, we would do this piece and then that, and then there's an investment of 15 million, 5 million per year. And then we would go through this process. There's 25 people involved. And then eventually after 5 years, we get you to where you said you wanted to be. And they're like, okay, that sounds like a really interesting journey. They've got all the pieces that they need to know. And that big call to action is bedded into the journey that takes them from. And then you say, well, if that sounds like, you know, if you want to get to that place that you talked about, well, let's take the first step. All you got to do is speak to Mary. So that it feels, you know, relatively straightforward. So many people just don't, and to talk about this more holistically, so many people don't step forwards into starting a new business, or to changing their health and fitness, or to changing their relationship, or making some significant change in their life. So many people don't do it because it is so big, and they think it's just way too much. And to pull back to Will Smith, because he's on my mind, because I saw him yesterday. It's fantastic. I was like sitting in the third row. It's like a masterclass from him. He tells this story, which some people may be familiar with, where his dad, when he was 11 years old, his dad tore down a wall of his shop and said, you and your brother are going to rebuild this. And they thought, this looks like trying to build an entire skyscraper in New York. Like, how are we supposed to do this? And they were whinging and complaining. And he said, don't think about the wall. Today, you're going to lay one brick perfectly, and eventually there will be a wall.
Yeah.
And so the same goes if you want to take people on a journey with you. If you're doing a presentation to your team and you want to motivate them for like a sales kickoff, or if you're doing a team update, or if your company's going through a crisis and you talk to them about the current pain, the better future, the journey to go on, all you really need to do is to encourage them to lay one brick. And that's it. And once they've laid one brick, they'll be like, maybe I could lay another brick. And then you keep going, and eventually you get to where you need to be.
It's awesome, man. Super, super powerful, super good. I think a lot of people are going to take a lot from this, because I am. This is really good. The last question that I have about that, and then we'll kind of wrap up here, is the journey itself, right? Do you have like a system that you use for that, on going through the journey, or is it on I know you talked about, this is where you're going to share with them the steps and the monetary, or, you know, how do you go about is there like, you know, like an acronym or something that you use to teach people how to go through the journey, or how to set up the journey?
So there's two things about this. The first piece, and this is where so many people go wrong, and where our company has done so well with clients over the years. Like you say, because we had a nice conversation previously about funnels, which I'm fascinated by, and we don't have any. And so to talk about in terms of business, 18 or 19 months ago, my company had never done any virtual training. In fact, we said, we don't think virtual training will work. We'll do everything face to face. And then there was a pandemic lockdown and we had to figure it all out. And in an average year, we would normally get 1,000 bookings for our team, around about 1,000 bookings. In the space of the last 18 months, we've had 3,000 online bookings for our team to do training for people. So it's just sort of accelerated. So how do we do that? When we're talking to people about the journey, loads of people go wrong because they think, I've got to have this all figured out. I need to have a PowerPoint that's going to get this. I need to have slides. I need to have loads of videos and so on. But instead, what people like, what I used to love as a child was a choose your own adventure, where you get to the end of a paragraph and it says, hey, do you want to do this or do you want to do this? I was obsessed by these. Stephen King had some great ones. It's a really good way to go. And so what we encourage people to do, and this is what our team has done for 21 years, is that don't go in prepared on that journey. We ask questions continually saying, okay, let me understand your challenges. Let me understand where you want to be. Let me find out then along the journey, what would feel comfortable for you? What sounds good for you? What have you tried before? What is going to look good? And then you can ease into that a sense of, look, here's what's popular for our clients. Here's what we've used in the past. How does that sound for you? And what would you like more of and less of? This is what I can tell you is an expert version of what many people have liked, but what do you like? The other piece, just to put in there as a little nugget on this, is let's say that you got a formula, or maybe you've got a funnel that you're using for people, and you're thinking, I can't ask them because they're on the other side of YouTube or something like that. How do you do it? The key thing to remember about stories is very simply this: like when Aladdin rubbed the lamp and the genie pops out in the story, how many wishes does he get? Does he get 17? Does he get a spreadsheet? Does he get a 200-page instruction manual? No, he just gets 3 wishes. And because of that, we feel compelled as listeners to think, I really need to know what wish number 3 is going to be. And so we keep on listening. And so if you're going to guide people on a journey, no matter how complex it might be, there might be 37 steps that they need to take. But instead of taking them through those 37, say, look, there's 3 major areas I really need to talk to you about if you want to go from your challenge across to a better future. Let me break it down like that. And as soon as people hear 3, they relax. Because guess what? I mean, try this. Watch the evening news tonight, whichever is your favorite channel, CNN, Fox, or wherever you want to go, BBC, and watch what happens when they open the news. They're going to talk to you about challenges when the thing open.
Everything's horrible.
Yeah, it could be everything's horrible. And occasionally at the end, they say, and in better news, there is a new royal baby or a new baby panda at San Diego Zoo. And so there might be those things. But what they do at the beginning is they give you 3 major headlines. So many people, multiple people working on my team at Body Talk are previous broadcasters, journalists. And they'll say, when they're presenting live on TV, it's coming down to the countdown of, we've got to get ready. We've got to present the news, the story, the sports. They're always looking for 3 major headlines. And at the top of the hour, they'll say, tonight's main headlines, 1, 2, 3. What they don't do is, in reality, there's 27 things that's happened. They don't go, main headlines, this, I'm going to be going for a while. Let me just go through it. Okay, page after page. They give you 3. They boil it down. And then during the rest of the show, they go through those 3 in more detail so that people have understood it. They go, okay, that's fine. That's digestible. If you're giving people 7 or 27, they're just not going to stick around.
Got it. Yeah, this is so awesome. Thank you so much for that. This is really, really, really good information. And so 2 questions for you, just wrapping this up. One is, what's your next play? So what we define the next play is, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And when are you going to do that by? Like, what is your next play? Obviously you're doing well. You've built a business. But what's next for you, man? What's your next level up?
Yeah, great question. I've really been mulling this recently. And I think the big next play for me is what I noticed with people coming out of lockdown is that something has been lost in lockdown, which not a lot of people are talking about, which is the spark of 2 humans together. When people are together right now, for many people, there is just a mismatch. There's just a nervousness of people being together. And so the next stage for me is we're really diving into the science of human connection. Where I've talked to people about, the science of storytelling and the science of sales in many ways, and also of presenting to people. But that real piece around what I love is seeing 2 people connect or seeing a leader connect with their tribe. And so working with people on whether that is still virtual or hybrid or in-person meetings, helping them just make sure that that true connection is there, because people are starving for connection. We want meaningful connection with the people around us. Through authenticity and through a sense of safeness and vulnerability that we can have with other people. So that for me is the next step that I'm going to be taking with our clients, and I have an idea for a big summit on this going ahead in just over a year. It's going to build up towards this when people get feeling safer and safer of actually being together for a few days. But that's the space that I really want to be in and be leading, because I know that that's where people are really missing that sense of connection. So guiding them back to that place where we can be together.
Yeah, it's so big, man. So you're telling me that scrolling on Instagram Reels and TikTok isn't human connection?
Well, I think there's a lot that we can gain from that, where it depends on which voices you're choosing.
People are starving for a connection outside of that, because that's what we've had now. It's like,
yeah. And we've sort of been used to it, that idea of, I'll just, I'll stay connected by liking someone's post rather than picking up a phone and going for a coffee with them.
Yeah, exactly.
We are missing that piece, but we're also a bit clunky with it. It's a bit like at the beginning of lockdown, I didn't drive my car for at least 3 months. I then got back in the car and I thought, I'm not really confident I could drive this. I don't know which pedals which again. Okay. It's a bit clunky, and the same things happen with people. So bringing that back and taking it next level. And the other thing that has happened on social media is people have been more raw and more vulnerable about a sense of, look, this is what I'm struggling with right now. And I've got pressures, and I've got my cat here and my kids I'm homeschooling. And so we want that. As we go back to the workplace, I don't think anybody wants to go back to corporate armor, big glass buildings, glass and steel, and let's pretend like this didn't happen. We want a more connected society, and that's where we need to go.
100%. And where can people find you?
So people can find me at ukbodytalk.com. If they're interested in the work that I do, my team does. You can also find me on Instagram at Richard Newman Speaks. I aim to put out good, useful resources multiple days per week. Also LinkedIn, Richard Newman at Body Space Talk. Not like a word, but not body talk, body space talk.
Like an actual space.
That's it, an actual space.
Definitely follow Richard. I mean, he puts out really, really good quality content, just like he did on this podcast. So if you want to continue to grow as a communicator and storyteller, definitely shoot Richard a follow. So thank you so much for being here, man. It's been an honor, and I'm really glad that I was able to get you on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good day, man.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Play podcast. If you liked the show, make sure to leave us a review. For more resources, visit relentlessuniversity.com or download the free Relentless University app. And if you're interested in having me speak at your next event, visit relentlessrichie.com. Until next time.